Hi, welcome to this lecture on the anatomy of breathing for yoga teachers. As a yoga teacher, we spend a lot of time cueing the breath. And at first, this can seem unusual. It's highly unlikely our students are going to stop breathing whilst in a yoga pose. But one of the ultimate goals of yoga is to calm and soothe the mind so that the yogi may reside in their own true nature. Now, our breath can directly influence the quality of the mind, the nervous system, and how we feel, helping us to achieve that ultimate goal of yoga. More than that, the breath is one of the primary sources of prana, life force, vital energy in the body. And as a yogi, we're looking to lengthen, to expand, to improve the quality of our prana so we can live our life with vitality and energy. These slides will also be available to you in a PDF format, so don't worry if you can't see them in detail or would like to take a closer look another time. Let's dive on in. So oxygen is the body's life force. Without it, we die. If you simply deprive yourself of oxygen for only just a few minutes, you are heading into deadly trouble. Respiration, aka breathing, is a vital process in the body where we draw air in. This is circulated around our body. The oxygen is taken to every cell of our being. The waste product of carbon dioxide is then expelled through the body through the same process as we exhale. Now, respiration is something that we normally do unconsciously throughout the day, and that's a really good thing. They say the average person doing an average amount of activity in the day takes 20,000 breaths every single day. Imagine trying to remember to breathe 20,000 times a day. Now that adds up to an average of 7.3 million breaths per year. And over a lifetime, an average lifetime, that's 550 million breaths you take. So thankfully, we don't have to remember to do them. But unusually, this process that our body can do unconsciously, which is regulated and controlled through the brainstem, can also be taken under conscious control. And that makes it really quite unusual. So you can consciously choose to lengthen the breath, to alter the breath, and to even hold the breath. But ultimately, your body's nervous system will override you. So if you try to hold your breath for longer than it is safe for you to do so, your body will kick in and make you breathe. Now, breathing well, why would we want to breathe better? We have 20,000 opportunities every single day to improve how we feel. There isn't a single process within the human experience that isn't improved through better breathing. So a few examples include more energy. Your cells need oxygen to react with the glucose to use as energy. So poor breathing lowers the levels of energy in the body, leading to sluggishness and fatigue. Better breathing equals better immunity. From oxygen, your body creates superoxides, which fight bacteria and viruses. Your nose filters and cleans the air, helping to take out any impurities. Our mental clarity or even intelligence. So your brain uses up 20% of your oxygen intake. So if you're breathing not well, the brain is not getting as much oxygen as it can, and it can become sluggish and not have as much mental agility. Physical stamina. If you've ever been doing exercise, hiking up a hill on a long mountain bike and felt the burning in your thighs, or even holding a yoga pose like tree for a long time and feeling the burning in your calf, that burning sensation comes because your muscles are using up oxygen energy quicker than your blood is replacing it. So if you can breathe better, You're taking in more oxygen with every breath. Your blood has more oxygen to take through the body and to replenish those levels of energy to keep up with the physical exertion that you are taking. Now, even happiness, you can breathe yourself happier. Your diaphragm during breathing helps with the release of serotonin, which is a mood stabilizing neurotransmitter in the body that's in your bloodstream. So simply that diaphragmatic belly breath can improve the levels of serotonin and lift your mood. And also our mental health. So how we're breathing works with our nervous system. If someone is scared, the breath gets short, the breath gets stuck. If someone's having a panic attack, they feel like they're not getting enough breath in. So being able to regulate our breath can de-escalate our nervous system in times of stress and anxiety. Now, the problem is most people breathe poorly for a variety of different reasons. Firstly, poor posture. So my lungs span a much bigger area than a lot of people think, really down from the bottom of the ribs right up to the collarbone. So if I am sitting slumped, there isn't space for my rib cage to fully expand and my lungs to fully expand and contract with my breath. So simply poor posture, contracting through the body, is going to have an effect on how we breathe. Poor technique. A lot of us don't know how to breathe well. It's not something that we're taught to do. If you look at a newborn baby breathing, as they sleep, you'll see their diaphragm and their belly rise up and down with every breath. But a lot of adults breathe just up here in the chest, this sort of lifting action, and no longer have that rising and falling of the belly and the diaphragm. So simply a poor breathing technique is affecting how much breath we are drawing in. On top of that, we have poor air quality. So pollution, smoking, being inside in stale air, in air-conditioned environments, high levels of pollen. So we don't have the best air quality. So the body is not drawing in as much breath or not as good quality air and breath either. Stress. Stress has a big effect on your nervous system. You simply say to someone, close your hand and make a tight fist. A lot of people will hold their breath whilst they do that. You look at a lot of people when they're concentrating in a yoga pose, they can forget to breathe. Tightness in the body, constriction in the shoulders, in the chest, not facilitating that full muscular movement of respiration. And also lung disease, ill health, asthma, anything that's affecting how the breathing apparatus is working itself. So why improve breathing? When you breathe better, I honestly think it completely changes your life. There's a myth that gets mentioned a lot in yoga that the ancient yogis believed that we were all born with a set, predetermined number of breaths. So maybe you got assigned the average 550 million breaths. Maybe someone else only got assigned 400 million breaths, or someone else a whopping 600 million. But the yogis say what is not pre-assigned is how long it takes you to use your allocation of breath. So that if you breathe deeper, more slowly, taking fewer breaths per minute, fewer breaths throughout your day, you're going to go through that allocation more slowly. Now, I don't believe there's someone doling out how many breaths I have at the time of my birth, but there is something to that. Breathing shallowly will have a negative effect on all of the processes in the body, and it's likely that will have a knock-on effect on either our lifespan or the quality of our life. I've heard people say that a better measure of how well someone is aging is not the date of their birth, but how strong their breath is when they test the pulmonary function. When you blow into a tube and they're testing how strong that is, that's a better measure of how much vitality somebody has. Now, not only that, but better breathing changes how we react. It can change our behaviour. So in a moment that I might want to get cross and yell at someone, I can take a mindful breath, soothe that fight or flight response, regulate my nervous system, and choose more wisely my behaviour in just the time of a breath. So as it alters our choices, alters our behaviour, alters our actions, this is going to alter our relationships. And by altering our relationships, we can change the very trajectory of our life. Simply not blowing up in an argument with someone in the workplace, or calming your nerves before an important interview. Better breathing can change the course of your life. Now that brings me on to something else. In traditional Chinese medicine that has many parallels with yoga, it is believed that your lungs store the emotions of grief, shock, and emotional turmoil. You only have to think of the reaction to surprise. So say you have a long lost relative that's been away and they suddenly pop up unannounced and you gasp at the surprise, that sharp intake of breath, that emotional response from the lungs. Or say on the flip side of that, you suddenly receive some very unexpected, terrible news and you start sobbing. If you've ever sobbed so much that you can't catch your breath, you feel that is the lungs physically going into spasm at that grief, at that turmoil, at that shock. And this is a lovely, interesting parallel with smoking. So you ask yourself, what is the age that most people first try smoking? Now, often it's around 11, 12, 13, those early teenage years, which, as we know, is when people first experience a real surge of emotions, and emotions that we don't yet have the agility and the experience to deal with. And then smoking has this effect of tapping down the emotions, of tapping down grief, of not letting it be so challenging to us. It's a way of coping. Again, if you know anyone in your life that's been a smoker, that's been successful in stopping smoking for a period of time, be that 6 months, a year, a couple of years, and then started smoking, ask them why they started smoking again. And it's normally a traumatic experience. They're not going to say, I started smoking because I saw an advert, or I just fancied one after 2 years of not smoking. It's normally a loss, a grief, a great upheaval or challenge. So there is something so poignant there in how we process emotion or don't through our breathing. So in the yoga practice, as we start to teach people to breathe, we start to open their posture, we start to facilitate this deeper breathing. This does bring emotions up that have been tapped down, that have been stored in the lungs. And it's important that we get this out and clear this out in safe, responsible ways. So let's take a look in detail at the actual anatomy of the respiratory system. So starting on a very, very basic level, your lungs are a pair of cone-shaped organs in your chest, protected by your ribcage. They are tasked with respiration, drawing in oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide. Each lung is made up of lobes. That really simply means sections, parts of. In the right side, the right lung, you have 3 lobes, the superior, middle, and inferior. However, over in your left lung, you just have 2 lobes, the superior and the inferior. Now, this is simply because Your left side also shares the space with your heart. So there's a little bit less space in there, hence just the 2 lobes on the left and the 3 on your right. And inside your chest, coming really down from the bottom of the ribs, right up to those top lobes, the superior lobes, finishing just beneath your collarbones. These are covered in a thin membrane. Now you can think of this like a sack, like Father Christmas's sack that encases all the presents. It's a double-walled sack and it's called the pleura. Now the pleura attaches to your intercostal muscles in your diaphragm. Now as you move, as the intercostal muscles pull on the pleura, that in turn is pulling the lungs open. As the diaphragm moves, it pulls on the pleura, pulls the lungs open. This changes the air pressure, making us inhale. From the outside, your lungs look like a pink sponge, but on the inside, they much more resemble the structure of a tree. And this is a fabulous imagery that really helps you get to grips with the anatomy of the lungs. So imagining an upside down tree. You have the main trunk of the tree, that then splits into 2 main branches. These branches then go off into a network of smaller branches. They go off into a network of twigs, and at the end of all of those, you have the leaves. Now keep that in your mind as we have a look at how that resembles the lungs. So you have your windpipe. That is the main trunk of the tree coming down your throat, and it's called the trachea. Now that trachea splits off into 2 main branches, one going into each portion of the lungs, and those are called the bronchus. So I have my trachea that splits into these 2 main branches, one into each lung, and is called the bronchus. That then splits off into a network of smaller branches called your bronchi. The bronchi then splits off into many, many smaller branches and twigs called your bronchioles. Now there's around 30,000 bronchioles in each lung, so 60,000 in total. So let's just flip back and have a look at that again on the tree. Now I have my trachea that splits off into the 2 main branches of my bronchus, split off into the smaller branches of the bronchi and into the tiny twigs of the bronchioles, all 30,000 of them in each lung. Now what's at the end of the bronchioles? I have the leaves of my tree. So the leaves of the tree are the alveoli. These are lots of tiny air sacs within which the gas exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs. Now these are covered in a network of capillaries. And the capillaries you can imagine like the veins that you see on the leaves of the tree. And these are so fine that your blood cells have to line up one behind the other in order to march through those capillaries. And the network is so dense that if you unraveled all of the capillaries that cover these alveoli, you'll have the surface area of an entire tennis court. The muscles that are involved in the respiratory system, your diaphragm and the intercostals. To some degree, it's also supported by the muscles in your neck and the abdominal muscles. But really, that major muscle of breathing is the diaphragm. So let's look at that in some more detail. The diaphragm is the most major muscle in respiration. And you can imagine it like a dome shape. And this dome sits right within your diaphragm. So it's sitting, right within your rib cage. So your diaphragm is sitting here like this dome. Also reminds me a little bit of an umbrella or a jellyfish. And it's sitting behind your ribs. And it splits your thoracic cavity, which has the lungs and the heart, from the abdominal cavity that has my other organs. And it's a really, really huge muscle sitting right here in this jellyfish shape. Now this muscle moves up and down as you breathe. So as you inhale, the diaphragm moves down, flattening out. That then pushes on the organs contained within your abdominal cavity, which is why the belly drops down and expands forwards as you inhale. Then as you exhale, the diaphragm domes back up. So as you inhale, the diaphragm descends. And as you exhale, the diaphragm rises. So come with me, make this dome shape with your hands and just sit it here in the ribs. As you inhale, flatten the dome down. And as you exhale, let the dome rise back up. Inhaling it down. Exhale it back up. Now keep that going and imagine how much that muscle moves. So your muscle, the diaphragm, can move up and down by up to 8 centimeters from the top of the exhale to the bottom of the inhale. Now, most people, it only will move up to about 3 to 4 centimeters because they're not working this muscle as well as they can. And it's like any other muscle in the body. It can be strengthened and improved and made to function more optimally. Your diaphragm has many muscle fibers that attach to the surrounding structures. So you have these muscle fibers that attach to the xiphoid process. So the xiphoid process is this cartilaginous tip at the bottom of your sternum that's right here at the front. So just bring your hands, find the ribs, find where the ribs join your sternum and just drop down between that space there. And if you make a shh, shh, do you feel that diaphragm move there? So that's where the diaphragm has got this fibril attachment right to the xiphoid process. Now the diaphragm also attaches to a great number of your ribs, ribs 12 to 6. So just bringing your hands here, spread the fingers like they're representing the ribs. Feel that. As you inhale, the ribs separate and expand. And as you exhale, they draw back in. You've got your intercostals there as well. Inhale, the ribs expand. And exhale, they draw in. But also that diaphragm attaching to ribs 12 to rib 6. And it's not just that. Your diaphragm also attaches to the back. And how well you breathe has a knock-on effect on back pain, which I find fascinating. So you have a central tendon, this little wiggly line here, that actually attaches to your 12th thoracic vertebra. So in that back, attaching right round in that 12th thoracic vertebra. But it attaches even lower than that. You have the crura of the diaphragm right here. It comes all the way down the back and attaches to your 4th lumbar vertebra. So you have this amazing muscle that's attaching right up at the front of my body, at the base of the sternum at that xiphoid process, attaching to all of these ribs, attaching to my mid-back and attaching right down into my lumbar spine in my lower back. And it's moving so much with every breath. So let's just have a moment to experience our breathing. I'm going to pick my lovely little visual aid here of an expandable. So to recap, as you inhale, the diaphragm descends, pulling down on the pleura, opening up the lower lobes of the lungs. It also pulls through the ribs and the intercostal muscles, opening up the side of your lungs. And lastly, the muscles in the neck and the upper body pull up the collarbones, opening those final top lobes of the lungs. So that as you inhale, you can imagine your lungs expanding in all directions, and as you exhale, coming back together. So breathe with me in this expandable, watch it. Inhale, opening the lungs in all directions. Exhale, back together. Diaphragm descends, ribs expand, collarbones lift, and exhale back together. Let's count that breath. Inhaling for the count of 3. Exhale for 3. Inhale for 4. Exhale for 4. Inhale for 5. Exhale for 5. Once more. Inhale for 6. And exhale for 6. And let a natural breath return. So I'd also love to further our explorations in a physical yoga practice on the breath. Many of our yoga poses not only bring our awareness to our breathing, but they strengthen these muscles of the respiratory system. So I hope you'll join me for the continuation of this practice as we apply our understanding of anatomy through a physical asana and breath-based yoga practice. Thank you for watching. Namaste.